Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Mark Forsthoffer, the Vice President for Federal at Mechanical Orchard. Mark, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And Mark, let's just start out by learning a little bit more about Mechanical Orchard and its role in the federal market.
Mechanical Orchard is a platform company that quickly and safely modernizes legacy systems without any of the associated disruption or risk that you have today. The reason we are here is that we have created a new process to modernize old systems that has birthed a new platform to do it with Gen AI. And that process is based on a first principles thinking of that modernization idea. One that includes a continuous deployment to production, using the behavior to replicate and create a digital twin, and automating that with a platform incrementally. The government has so much legacy systems, from mainframes to other technologies. The opportunity for them to take a serious bite with the new normal that they live in, I think, is really important for us, and really important for us to focus on a new way to do this with the technology and innovation that we have to bear, and especially one that can measure success by getting them into the cloud the right way.
Great. Well, can you tell me a little bit about where we are currently with IT modernization in the federal government, and Sure. where you think things should be going as far as a general framework, a general approach to everything?
Yeah, sure. I think of the modernization practice as it has been implemented today and for decades prior as a very linear process that has a set of serialized steps. And these steps kind of resemble how modern or old software was developed, or waterfall software was developed, but it still applies to modernizing systems. And I'm empathetic to that, because the systems that we are generally talking about are very locked in, very proprietary, old systems. Some have been around for 50 years. And that process usually has an investigation or an analysis part, and then some, in today's kind of cloud destination strategy, it has a moment to just migrate the thing to the cloud however I can. And commonly today, you'll apply AI to that to translate old code to some modern framework. But that is not done. It's still in a state where it's not trusted yet. How do you take a code base that is 50 years old and translate it into a modern language? The methods were totally different when it was created back then. Mm-hmm. So you have a situation where you have an instance in the cloud, but it's not usable. And so then a new effort comes to replicate the functionality of that system. And that takes multiple years. And when you're cutting over, that's often called a big bang. And when big bang cutovers happen, you're still not done, because you still have an unknown tail on that process to get it done. And I think that that is reaching a moment where the government has a new reality upon it. Fewer people, fewer dollars, smaller budgets. And many of those people that are fewer were the experts that knew how to run those systems in the old days or of old. And I think that the new reality of the government's posture going forward, and the way legacy modernization has progressed, just doesn't match anymore. Kind of further making that case, I think there's some interesting facts here. Like, I use mainframes as an example. They were introduced in the 1950s, but yet 70% of the US economy still goes through one of those. And the government spends 80% of its IT budget on legacy or old systems anymore. And all of that pattern, matched with a process that still has a very long cycle and a very undetermined end, I think is the opportunity that we have today.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of COBOL programmers leaving schools, graduating these days.
Or studying it in school, yes?
Right, exactly. Right. It's just a skill set that isn't as around as much, and so That's it's right. kind of an endangered skill set there. Mark, I hear what you're saying as far as the status quo, moving beyond it, the value proposition of getting to this new place, but of course, getting to there is going to have some bumps and hurdles along the way. There's going to be some risks along the way. How can agencies navigate all these risks, take on these costs, as you mentioned, at a time when budgets are tighter, resources are tighter, workforces are smaller, and so why should they take this on? Speak to, again, the value proposition of getting this done.
The evolution of that process, going from waterfall to agile, had one big reality that it overcame, which was the fact that waterfall developments were very difficult to predict, very difficult to end on time, many documented failures. And so what Agile has done is it eliminated this long tail of risk where I am going to create something, but I have to wait till perfect to determine if it's right, and that could take years. So the way modern software is done is you're able to deliver something to a community to test or validate quickly, buying down your risk. How do you do that to a legacy system modernization where the structure is built in an unknown and a locked-in stack, sometimes documentation missing? So I think that the value prop that we bring is we have figured out a way to reinvent that modernization process, to bring that incremental deployment to production and eliminate that long tail risk that you see with waterfall projects. And I think maybe the next phase of how we talk about this is how we do that. And if that's okay, we can talk about it like that.
Yeah, let's get into it. Can you tell me a little bit more about what Mechanical Orchard has kind of discovered along the way?
Yeah, so Mechanical Orchard for the past 2 years has been incubating a new or rethinking of a new process to do this. Our history has been built on teaching companies from startups to large enterprises to even the federal government how to be great at software. And we've done this by having a very high discipline, a disciplined approach on solving any problem with a software stack. And the way we've done this is we focused on two things. We focus on continuous integration, which is the ability to incrementally deploy functionality, incrementally integrate into a system new functionality, and test-driven development. And test-driven development means I write the test before I write the code. I set up the conditions to pass before I write the code. Takes the pressure off of writing perfect code because you have a perfect test potentially. So we went about that process on this old portfolio of things. And we knew that there was an opportunity here because in our past we tried to surround, we saw the ability to try to decommission old systems by surrounding it with new software rarely succeeded. And that legacy system that we talk about here is one that's driving the mission that is at its heart. Very difficult to take out. And I think many feds who hear this will agree with that. Going back to how we do this, the trick is, how do you apply test-driven development to a system that's 50 years old? Like, how do you write a test adequately so that you can write an incremental job or incremental workload piece of software that works on a system so old? And what we figured out is the way to do that is to match it against the behavior of that system, not the code of that system. What it does and how it behaves, not how it was written. And what we have built is a framework to create the data flows of that system to catalog the behavior of it. And we collect that into what you might call a test suite or a massive test suite that can be played back on demand. And by doing that, now I've created a test case for behavior, and I can now write software to that. I can write code to that. And where this gets interesting, I think, when we talk about the scale of these legacy systems that are in the millions of lines of code, and maybe the documentation is missing, or the people that know it aren't here anymore, is that doesn't matter so much. Sure, it's interesting to learn code. You need to know where the seams are in a system. But if your North Star is behavior, then you're able to now apply modern techniques like Gen AI to write code at a massive speed, innovation into that process, and then measure success by accurately matching it against the behavior of the system. That is the revolution that we've done that is totally disrupting that Big Bang process that I talked about a minute ago.
Yeah, and how should agencies what should agencies make of this kind of breakthrough in technology, keeping up with
Right.
the emerging technology here?
Agencies have had a few revolutions on adopting cloud. I think the first was this lift and shift revolution. I'm going to try to move as many low-hanging fruits to the cloud that I can. They did that for 5 years or so. And then the next 5 years was, I'm going to now, I realized that lifting and shifting was kind of moving tech debt. And tech debt in the cloud is maybe even more expensive than it was on-prem. So now I'm going to actually focus on writing good software that runs in the cloud properly. So it's open, it's agile, it's not locked in any way, and I'm able to now shrink my footprint because it's purpose-built for the cloud. Mm-hmm. That has kind of matured in the DoD. They call it a software factory. They have created an infrastructure, an architecture where any modern company, any modern software development company can write code to work in that space. The third revolution perhaps is on us now, which is now I have the real systems, the legacy systems where 80% of the government spends its dollars on are still stuck and not in this modern space. So I think that the government should think about it like there's a new way to incrementally move that stuff there, continuously modernize those old things into the cloud in a way that is cloud native at its endpoint. I think that is the moment that we try to offer the government.
Yeah. And Mark, getting back to measuring what matters, how can Mechanical Orchard help agencies' ability to measure the effectiveness in the cloud?
I think the win for Fed agencies is an increased speed to get these legacy systems that are mission critical running in their software factory or their modern DevSecOps environment. And I think that Feds care about three things when taking that on. One, the obvious one, I want that legacy system to run where my modern apps run. The second one is I can't disrupt the mission, no disruption whatsoever. And the third is incremental wins. I need wins in my lifetime, no more big bang. I can't afford to budget a project or set a goal timeline that's a couple of years out. I can't afford to do that anymore. Not only risk, but politically, I can't. So I think what we should interject into this process is that the way MO has created a process, we created a new process that focuses on disrupting that timeline by showing wins, by using that behavior analysis or behavior test suite North Star strategy that I talked about, so that you can have incremental wins, to bite on risk, but also to show progress. That is the kind of heart of your question, to show progress. And doing that in a way where automation is part of it. And so we have not, it's not just a process for us. As I said at the beginning, we are a platform company. And so the Gen 1 of that platform was focused on the most locked-in system there is, a mainframe. And today our platform modernizes mainframes with human oversight, but AI doing it, matching it against that test suite that I talked about behavior. All of our engagements are meant to be, let's take your system portfolio set that needs to be migrated or modernized and apply a process where incremental wins can happen, and use automation as the accelerant for all of that. Like all of our engagements are built such that it can be successful with few humans doing big code translations.
Mark, a lot of great insights. Thanks so much. Thanks again to today's guest, Mark Forsthoffer, the Vice President for Federal at Mechanical Orchard. I'm Jory Heckman, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more on the Cloud Exchange.